I used to think surprises were sometimes the best thing in a marriage. That day, I woke up early, sent the kids to my in-laws, and drove home with an eager smile. But what awaited me wasn't my wife's embrace, it was cruel betrayal right in my own home. I'm not the type of romantic man who showers with roses or sweet words every day. But I always tried to show my love in my own way, quietly, patiently, and sincerely. That day was no different. I wanted to dedicate an entire weekend to my wife, no kids, no responsibilities, just the two of us together, like when we first fell in love. I woke up early, quietly preparing everything. I took the kids to my parents' house, almost a 2-hour drive away. I didn't tell my wife anything. She thought I'd be staying there all day as usual, like all those family gatherings on my side that she often avoided. But this time, I just dropped the kids off and immediately turned the car around for home. In my heart was a simple excitement. To see her surprised and happy face when she realized this whole weekend was just for the two of us. I even made reservations at an Italian restaurant my wife loved. She'd mentioned wanting to go back there for ages, but we hadn't had the chance. After dinner, I planned to take her for a few drinks. Then we'd walk together across the small wooden bridge near the lake where we had our first date. In my mind, I pictured a perfect evening, with smiles, glances, and tight hand-holding like when we were newly married. As the car started rolling back into our neighborhood, I noticed a dark gray pickup truck parked in front of our house. It wasn't familiar, but neighbors sometimes had guests, and cars parked along the street were normal. I didn't think much of it. I parked a few houses down. A silly but sweet idea suddenly popped into my head. Instead of driving straight into the driveway as usual, I'd use the basement door where I kept a spare key and sneak up to surprise her completely. I even thought, she's probably reading a book or relaxing on the sofa. I took slow steps towards the basement door, my hand lightly on the doorknob to avoid making a sound. The house was unusually quiet, but then I heard a sound. First, it was just breathing. Light, broken, then faster, more urgent. I froze. I thought, maybe she's alone. I didn't want to embarrass her or make her uncomfortable, so I planned to go back to the car and enter through the garage as usual, making noise to let her know I was home. But then I heard a man's voice. Unfamiliar. Unknown. A chill ran down my spine. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst through my chest. The first feeling wasn't anger, but stunned disbelief. As if my brain hadn't yet processed what was happening, but my body had already sensed the brutal truth awaiting me. I stood there, in the darkness of the basement, for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Then I decided to go up. Not to confront. Not to cause a scene. Just I needed to see it with my own eyes. Just I needed to know if I was having a terrible nightmare. And then everything was worse than I imagined. I ascended the stairs cautiously, as if afraid of shattering something that was already about to break. Each step I took on the wooden floor tightened my chest. The sounds from the living room became clearer and clearer, and no further explanation was needed. I knew she no longer belonged to me, at least not in this moment. The kitchen door was half open. From where I stood, I couldn't see the people, only clearly hear hushed laughter, rapid breathing, and the sound of skin against skin. Inside me, something began to die, not loudly, not violently, just quietly crumbling. I wasn't brave enough to walk straight in. I didn't want to cause a scene. I wasn't the kind of man who would fight his wife's lover or yell and smash things. I just needed proof. Something so I wouldn't be seen as crazy when faced with denial. I pulled out my phone, my hand trembling. I opened the camera, slowly extending the phone from behind the wall separating the kitchen and living room. The screen showed and I saw everything. Rachel, my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for almost 10 years, was in the arms of a man I had never met. They weren't hiding. No caution. As if this was something they always did when I was away. As if I had never existed in this house. I didn't turn away. I didn't speak. I just recorded. My hand held the phone steady while my mind went blank. Every emotion, anger, hurt, astonishment piled up, almost paralyzing me. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 3 minutes. Maybe 10. She said something vague, then they both stood up. Rachel pulled a shawl around herself and laughed, saying, "We have time, let's go upstairs." He agreed, and they both disappeared up the stairs as if there was nothing to fear, as if I didn't exist. When I entered the living room, no one was there, only the evidence and the other man's clothes. I saw his jeans on the chair with a brown leather wallet on top. I didn't think, I just acted on instinct. Opened the wallet, took out his driver's license. Read the name, the address. I photographed it all. His name was Daniel Reed, living on the west side of the city. I had never heard Rachel mention him. Part of me wanted to know, how did they meet? How long had this been going on? But the other part of me was screaming, what's the point of knowing? It's already too much. I left the house I once thought was the safest place. Went back the same way, descended to the basement, leaving as silently as I arrived. But now I was no longer the man of the morning. I was no longer Rachel's husband. I was no longer the person I thought I was. I sat in my car, the door closed, and I broke down, not screaming, not cursing, but sobbing. The soundless cries of a man who had just lost the greatest trust in his life. I opened the video, pressed play. I don't know why. Maybe to confirm I wasn't dreaming. Maybe because I needed a slap to the weak trust that still lingered. I watched it all. Every second. Every frame. My heart felt like it was being stabbed over and over. And then, I just sat there not knowing what to do next. I don't remember how long I sat in the car. Everything was blurry through a haze of tears. My head was empty, but my heart felt heavy, as if someone had submerged it to the bottom of the sea. I couldn't call anyone, couldn't drive anywhere. I couldn't go back to my parents' house, they would ask about the kids. And I certainly couldn't say, I found out Rachel is cheating. Right now she's in bed with some guy in our house. Finally, I decided to go back. Not to confront. Not to reveal everything. I just didn't know what else to do. I needed a safe way out to survive this moment. So I chose silence. Like a survival instinct. I drove slowly, deliberately making a lot of noise as I entered the house. I opened the garage, closed the car door harder than usual, and walked into the house like someone who had just returned from a long trip, as if I had no idea what had happened. Rachel heard me. She rushed out from the upstairs hallway, wearing a bathrobe, her hair wet and disheveled. She looked at me stunned, her eyes slightly panicked. "You're home early?" Her voice trembled slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. "I thought you'd be at your parents' until evening?" I tried to force a smile. "I wanted to surprise you. I dropped the kids off and came straight back. I made reservations at your favorite restaurant. Tonight is just for us." She blinked, silent for a second. Then a smile appeared, half surprised, half embarrassed. "Really? Oh my God. Why didn't you say anything sooner?" "I was just about to take a shower." I nodded. "It's okay. Take your time. I brought a bottle of wine. We can have a little before we go out." She invited me into the living room, the same room where she had betrayed me less than an hour ago. I sat down on the sofa, the same place he had sat. I could feel the smell, the breath, and the memories still lingering on every fiber of the fabric. She poured 2 glasses of wine. Her hand trembled slightly. I said nothing. I just looked at her, the woman I once loved with all my heart, now standing before me, as if nothing had happened. We clinked glasses. "To surprises," she smiled. I raised my glass. "To the truth." She tilted her head, but didn't ask again. Just drank. She didn't know what I had seen. Didn't know what I had recorded. Didn't know I had just stood silently in the house like a ghost, witnessing everything she hid. We sat close on the sofa. She pulled me closer, kissed my cheek, whispered something. I didn't hear clearly. At that moment, from the corner of my eye, I saw the shadow of a man, him tiptoeing down the stairs from the room above. Slowly, gently, he walked past behind me, then headed towards the basement door. I saw everything. I knew everything. But I did nothing. I let him escape. I let Rachel continue the charade. I let myself be touched, kissed, caressed by the person who had just betrayed me. Not because I was stupid. Not because I lacked self-respect. But because at that moment, I no longer knew who I was. I was like a walking corpse, shocked, crushed, suffocated by emotion to the point of pure numbness. I sat there, drinking wine with my wife, and let her lover quietly pass through the back of the house. In silence, in bitterness, and inside me, everything began to crumble in the quietest way, like a building whose foundation has been pulled out. From that day on, I was no longer myself. I don't recall the exact moment when the shift began within me. Perhaps it was the 10th time I rewatched the video. Perhaps it was when Rachel casually sent me a selfie with the caption, "Miss you, hubby," while I sat quietly in the office restroom, holding my head, my heart aching as if punched. Perhaps it was last Wednesday morning when I was having breakfast with my wife, and she mentioned a new colleague at work, someone named Daniel, the name that almost made me drop my coffee cup. She said with a carefree smile, "He just transferred from another branch. He's cute, but a bit arrogant." I looked directly into her eyes then, and I swear Rachel had no idea that I was sitting across from her, holding an emotional bomb that needed just one more word to explode. I nodded, a weak smile on my face. "Yeah, sounds interesting." I don't know how I maintained that calm facade. Maybe it was because I feared that if I exploded I would lose complete control. I wouldn't just lose my marriage, I might lose my very humanity. But from that day on, something inside me began to change. I was no longer the silent victim. I started paying attention to her every word, every expression, every text message. I even secretly installed keylogging software on her laptop. I began to track the smallest changes. Late nights, messages she deleted as soon as she received them, phone calls from colleagues that she took on the balcony. And even worse, I started imagining what I wanted to do to Daniel. I used to be a kind person, but now I found myself thinking dark thoughts. I found his address, printed out a map, saved a picture of his house on my phone. I knew he lived alone. I knew his work schedule. I even knew his license plate. And sometimes I thought about going to his house, knocking on the door, looking him straight in the eye and showing him I wasn't some stupid husband who could be easily betrayed and ignored. But then I stopped myself. Not because he didn't deserve to be confronted, but because I was afraid of losing control. I was afraid I would cross a line. And then, not only would Rachel lose a husband, my children would lose a father. Amidst these chaotic thoughts, I still lived. Still played the role of a normal man. Still took the kids to school, went to work, had dinner with my wife. But inside, I knew. I was walking very close to the final edge. I was like a coiled bomb, any slight touch could make it explode. And then, it came closer than I imagined. One evening, Rachel emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in her white robe. The warm light cast a glow that made the scene almost identical to the moment in the video, the moment she climbed on top of Daniel. I couldn't take it anymore. I blurted out, "That day, did he see you wearing that robe too?" Rachel froze. Her eyes changed. No longer carefree, no longer surprised, but terrified. I sat there, looking directly at her. Silence. No explanation. No accusation. Just the silence preparing to become a storm. She said nothing. Just stood there, her hand still holding the half-used towel for her hair, her gaze frozen in midair. I didn't say anything more. I didn't need to. That one sentence was enough for Rachel to understand. I knew. No more lies could salvage it. No more way to deny it. She understood. And I was tired. Rachel sat down on the chair opposite me. Silence for a long moment. The entire house seemed to hold its breath. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice trembling, but no longer trying to appear innocent. I looked straight at her. "Since that day, when I pretended to come home as a surprise." She covered her face with her hands and cried. Not the dramatic sobbing you see in movies, but silent, helpless tears. I sat still. No comfort. No anger. I had cried enough for both of us. I don't know why I was like that," she choked out. "At first it was just talking. Then I felt cared for, desired. And you were always tired, distant. And you chose to betray me? I asked, my voice still eerily calm. I was wrong, she said, her breath catching. I know I was wrong. But I didn't think you'd find out. I didn't think you saw everything. I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table, opened the video. But this time I didn't watch it. I just looked at the screen. She turned her face away, trembling. I turned it off. I've watched that video dozens of times. I said, my eyes still on her. Not to blame, not to remind, but to remind myself that I wasn't dreaming. That the woman I loved truly did that to me. I'm sorry, Mike. For the first time in weeks, I heard her say my name without any control. Just pleading, regret, despair. I stood up. I can't live like this anymore. What do you mean? She panicked. Since that day, I've been living like a shadow. I've lost sleep, lost feeling for everything. I hate myself for not being brave enough to leave. And I hate you even more for turning the woman I love into a liar I no longer recognize. Rachel burst into uncontrollable sobs. She rushed to hug me, but I stepped back. I need time. I need space. I need to find myself again. I'm not sure if I'll divorce you, but I can't continue living in this house where every brick is a lie. She didn't try to hold me back anymore. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest, crying as if everything had just slipped from her grasp, and truly, it had. That night, I packed a few clothes, got in my car, and left the house. I didn't know where I would go. Maybe a motel for a few nights, maybe my parents' house. But I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the man who had walked into that house with a bouquet of flowers and a romantic evening planned. I was the man who had learned to rise from betrayal. Maybe later I'll forgive. Maybe not. But right now, I chose the only thing I could do. Free myself from the pain that someone else caused, but that I was holding on to.